For the first time of the postseason, Pacers trail 0-2 in a series, down 2 games after losing by 9 to the Knicks here in MSG. Another crummy second half dooms the Pacers. Poor defense once again dooms the Pacers. We have so much to talk about on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello from Press Row here at Madison Square Garden, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, a lot to get to from a doozy of a Game 2 here in New York once again. Pacers once again leading at halftime. Pacers once again giving that lead away in the second half. And once again, not being able to finish it late. They actually had some stuff they went to in this game that worked well. They got a very, very, very good career best for the playoffs Tyrese Haliburton game. A lot of other starters looked good, and yet they couldn't defend well enough. They couldn't stop Jalen Brunson, even on a 1 foot. They couldn't stop OG Anunoby for the 28 minutes he played in the game. Dante DiVincenzo hits every timely shot he takes in the playoffs, which is amazing. He's very impressive. And it's 2-0 Knicks. 131-21 the final score. So much to get to. The bench was good. The starters were less good. The defense continues to stink. These second halves are brutal. I don't really know where to start, except I do. I'll say this first because I have a theory that a lot of people want to know more about this. Rick Carlisle, right after the game, takes the podium, gets it right to it with the officiating, saying there were 29 calls in Game 1 that the Pacers reviewed the footage of, made a clip package of. You're allowed to send those into the league. If you do, the other team can see it too. And then you can say, here's where you think the officiating was wrong. Pacers did not submit that package after Game 1. Rick didn't like the officiating in Game 2 at times. He got ejected, although both texts were in the last 2 minutes of the game. He got hot after an inadvertent whistle. Out he goes. And he had a lot of things to say about the officiating. You could read those comments on my Twitter feed. I'll have a story up at some point, most likely before I leave New York City. I don't think, obviously the last minute of Game 1 was so dramatic with the officiating that it was worth the whole segment. I don't think it is today, and I'm not going to talk about it as much. If you want to hear the Game 1 thoughts, you can go back to 2 podcasts ago. Today, we're focusing on what the Pacers did on the basketball court that was wrong, because that's what Tyrese Haliburton said. That's what TJ McConnell said, and that's what Myles Turner said after the first game, but I thought it was more egregious that time. Either way, let's dive into the basketball game of basketball that was played here in this building today. Noting that the Pacers and Rick Carlisle specifically very frustrated about the officiating once again. Look, this has come down to the second half, both games so far. Game 1, Pacers gave up 49 in the first half and 72 in the second half, a 23-point jump. Today, they gave up 63 in the first half and 67 in the second half. Not as big of a difference, but the way it happened was a little different. The 36-point first quarter ruins that. But the thing that changed in the second half of the Pacers this time is they scored 73 points in the first half and only 18 in the third quarter for a 48-point second half. So the formula for this for the Pacers has not been the same in both games. In Game 1, they came out in the second half, could not guard a potted plant. Brunson scored 21 in the fourth quarter, and they gave it away. Tonight, they were about the same level defensively in both halves, I would say. Maybe a little worse in the second half, and the total number is misleading because there were some fouls on purpose at the end. But their offense completely fell apart, especially in the third quarter. Far and away their worst offensive quarter of the series, and it cost them a game. They've had one flimsy stretch of quarter in both of these games, and that's been enough. And that is where I think the starting point is when talking about Knicks Pacers. So much is made, rightfully so, I think, of the depth, of the juice. Can the Knicks keep doing this? The war of attrition, as Dan Devine asked about after the game. Can the Knicks keep playing all their guys for this many minutes? Josh Hart becomes the second player in the last decade since Jimmy Butler to play 48 minutes in a playoff game, 2 playoff games in a row. Can they keep doing that and stay ahead of the Pacers? Well, it looks like it. It looks like it. And they keep doing this to the Pacers 2 games in a row. And they have one stretch, both games, like I said, mid-fourth quarter of Game 1 and the third quarter of Game 2. I would say late third quarter, mid to late third quarter would be where I would describe this as happening, where they just ran over the Pacers. Third quarter, Knicks played 4 starters all 12 minutes. Brunson, DiVincenzo, Hartenstein, and Hart all played the whole quarter. 12 points for DiVincenzo. He was 5 of 6 from the field with 2 threes. 10 points for Jalen Brunson, who was hopping around Didn't even play to end the first half. Huge chance when he came back into the foot injury. He had 10 points, 3 assists, 2 steals. Josh Hart was 3 for 5 with 6 points. OG Anunoby, who we'll get to later, probably would have played the whole quarter if they would have been able to. He had 6 points. We'll see if we see him again this series. Like, they just ran through the Pacers with their offense, but 36 is what they scored in the first quarter too. The reason this was different was the Pacers offense was awful in this quarter. Andrew Nembhard was 3 for 3 from the field, and the rest of the Pacers were a combined 5 for 21 from the field in the third quarter. Aaron Nesmith 0 for 3. Pascal Siakam 0 for 5. Turner missed his only shot. TJ McConnell missed both of his shots. He was good in the whole game. We'll get to him later. Ben Shepherd missed 2 shots. Isaiah Jackson missed his only shot. Obi Toppin and Andrew Nembhard combined for 75% of the Pacers' makes in the third quarter. They could not make anything. They weren't generating as good of shots as they were in the first half. They were over 50% from 3 at the break. They were 1 for 7 from deep in the third quarter. So even with 4 offensive boards, even with 6 of their 8 shots being assisted, even with just about the same level of defense they had in the first quarter, it wasn't good, but they were in the game at halftime. They totally gave it away in that quarter. They fell from way up to way down, and they couldn't recover. They played fine in the fourth quarter. They cut it to 1 a few times, but that absolutely sunk them. This is 2 second halves in a row where this has happened, and to me, this says a lot about the Knicks, who, again, they play their starters a bunch. That unit is amazing, but Tom Thibodeau is a heck of a coach, man, and Jalen Brunson is a heck of a player, and one of the Pacers' strengths all season. You've listened to this podcast all season. You've heard me talk about this a million times, and you saw this game to game a little bit in the first round, but the third quarter, second halves, the Pacers usually have been better than their opponent. Go back to the first series they played, game 1. Yeah, they got smoked, but they were way better in the second half of that game. Second half of game 4, they were much better. Second half of the clinching game, they were the much better team. I think in game 2, they were a little better in the second half. I'd have to remember the exact game flow there. Really, only game 3 was the only game they weren't the much better team, right? So that's a thing we've seen from this Pacers in the playoffs and in the regular season. They adjust from game to game. They're better in second halves. Carlisle and the point guard, Tyrese Haliburton, right? That's a thing. The coach point guard synergy helps the team adjust. The Knicks also have it, and they are very good at changing things up slightly in the second half in some form of their approach, whether that's in this one, all of a sudden they're better at those back cuts when the Pacers start stunning at Brunson, or the swing. They were playing through Hartenstein a lot in the first half, and then they adjusted how that was going in the second half, and they would hit him at the top of the key, and then he would fire it to the opposite corner to a shooter. Like, that happened a couple times. And like all these little things that maybe I'm just dumb and they happened in the first half and I didn't see them as much, but they were just playing better. They played crisper. Their defense was more locked in. They had a game plan ready for every player. I apologize if you can hear the many loud noises of them destroying the New York Knicks court. That really sunk the Pacers, and they could not get out of it. And so this series, we've seen it twice, where one of the Pacers' biggest strengths has been recovering at halftime of games or between games of series, and neither of those happened today. They were better. Like, Haliburton we'll get to many things that were better and worse from this game than game 1. Haliburton got going. They were good in the first half. They were taking care of the Brunson-less minutes. They have a new lineup that worked really well that I think is going to be a major factor going forward in the series, and yet they still couldn't win because the adjustments from the Knicks in the second half were so much better, and they tore them up. What really went wrong to me, DiVincenzo was amazing, and they kept having trouble on the backline rotations. Actually, like, Brunson had 28, and he was hurt, right? That's not a fair reflection of his game. He was very good. Again, saying he broke his 40-point streak is not because he didn't play well. He was amazing. He just missed almost a full quarter of the game, over a full quarter of the game. Anyway, I'm rambling. When he was in, they were still trying their darnest to trap him and make it hard for him to see. And like, they switched it up in this game. People including me, talked about this from game 1 to 2. Did they try to put Nesmith on him? They started the game with Nembhard on him. Then they went to Nesmith, and they interchanged that throughout the game. And they would send 2 at Brunson, and then somewhere a cutter would be open. Josh Hart was often the beneficiary of that. Jalen Brunson ends this game with only 5 assists because it wasn't always on those, but those cutters were there. The one I talked about earlier, the Hartenstein bang passes were there. Hartenstein, 8 assists, led the Knicks. They were playing through him a lot in the first half too, right? DiVincenzo was the killer a lot of the times. On the cuts, he took 20 shots that led both teams. Of course, again, he's playing a ton of minutes. He took 12 threes that also led both teams. Again, played a ton of minutes. He made 6 of them because he's wide open a lot of the times, off of offensive rebounds, off of whatever happens at the top of the key with Hartenstein after 2 passes. Like, Brunson probably had a bajillion hockey assists in this game. I could go on and on. You get the gist of what I'm saying. The Knicks just kept playing their game, and they finally made the Pacers start to miss with good defense in that quarter, and together the game settles into their pace, the game settles into their style, their tenacity, their physicality dominates again, and the rebounding becomes a factor. Now, look, of course, when the Pacers miss a bunch of shots, they're going to lose the rebounding battle in the second half. 26-13 was the final number, but the offensive rebounds were close. The defensive rebounds lopsided because the Knicks shot 10% better and missed 6 fewer shots. And the Pacers missed 6 free throws. That was brutal. We'll get to that too. Whereas in the first half, like in game 1, the rebounding battle was much more even and actually favored the Pacers, who won the rebounding battle in the first half of both games. So a lot of similarities in the game flow of these games. Pacers hit the glass hard early. They're playing physical. They're keeping up with the Knicks. They're playing the way they want. The pace is good. And then in the second half, the Knicks adjust. They get back to their roots on the offensive glass. They're tough. They hit hard, and the Pacers struggle with it. And something changes in the flow of the game that really throws them off. And now they're down 2-0 in a series, and we will learn a lot about the Pacers in the next 4 days. They have 2 games at home. I've said this a million times on the recently, mostly because I just figured it out. They have not lost at home since March 18th. If they get to game 6, it's very possible. It'll be very close. I have to check the dates, and I'll try to do it right now. It's very possible, game 6 would be 1 day away from 2 months without losing in that building. They have a chance to bring the series back here 2-2. And everybody uses the trope all the time. A series doesn't start until the road team wins. Well, can the Pacers recover from these 2 games? These are painful losses where it's frustrating officiating, where you have a lead at halftime in both games, and they were leading by 9 in the fourth quarter of game 1. I don't think they ever got I'm double checking right now. I don't believe they ever got a lead in the fourth quarter of this game, but they got within 1 once and 2 like a million times. They're right there. These are the painfulest ways to lose, but they did it to themselves in a lot of ways, and they have a lot to figure out going into game 2. What are some of those things? Did you figure out what did and didn't work in game 2 that should be abandoned or continued in game 3? Can they actually do this? Man, oh man, do we have a lot to get to coming up here on Locked On Pacers. But first, let's talk about Yahoo Finance. Wouldn't it be great if you could see all of your investment and retirement accounts in one place? Well, with Yahoo Finance, you absolutely can. And what I love about it, as someone who writes all the time, they have a ton of news on there to help you with growing your portfolio, with dealing with the rising cost of inflation. You need to offset that. Yahoo Finance can help. And the news part of it, again, is my absolute favorite tool. They have stuff everywhere for the latest every day, how the market's doing, how certain important things are doing. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. And whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They're the #1 finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, which again is my favorite part of what they do. Independent research, customizable charts that are really easy to see. It's fantastic. You can securely link your brokerage accounts to get that all set up with a community of over 90 million users each month. Their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Of course, Locked On Knicks should be your second listen. I'm sure they're buzzing as the Knicks are up 2-0. They are 2 wins away from their first conference finals in a very, very long time. And they have, if you're a fan of the Knicks, the most likable possible team of dudes who will just run through a wall for each other and are funny and very, very good basketball players. Okay, so game 2, lots of different stuff that was good and bad and worth discussing after. Okay, here's something I liked in this game that I wonder if the Pacers can get back to, and it will be even more critical pending the status of OG Anunoby. 2 big things in this game I didn't really bring up in the first segment. I mentioned them, but didn't really discuss in length. Jalen Brunson got hurt in the first quarter. He got hit in first, like the hand nuts area. It was hard to tell what really happened there, but he stayed in the game. He was fine from that. And then later, Scott Agnes has the video, if you want to see it on his Twitter feed. There's a possession. He's just playing defense, moving around. All of a sudden, his foot is killing him, and he asks for a sub. He didn't return for the rest of the first half, and the Pacers crushed the Knicks in that stretch, which they should beat the Knicks. I believe I'll see where it finished. So the Knicks win this game by 9. With Brunson on the court, they are plus 26. So the Pacers were plus 17 with him out of the game, right? They're doing very well to punish the Brunson-less Knicks. They have to be better against the Brunson Knicks. Either way, he missed part of the game. He came back in. The other key injury was OG Anunoby, who was unbelievable. 28 points, his playoff career high, and only 28 minutes to get there. He was hitting threes, getting to the line, cutting, dunking. Pascal Siakam overplayed him a few times defensively. That was absolutely killer. He was amazing. He left the game, muscle injury. I believe it was called a sore left hamstring. Some, a.k.a. Nate Duncan, which is now spread to others, say that if a guy leaves the game with a muscle injury like that, is immediately announced out, there's a chance they're out 1 to 2 weeks. We'll see. We will see. The Knicks are so thin already. I mean, they played Alec Burks in this game for their 8th guy. He played 44 seconds. Other than that, they played 7, but one of those was Anunoby. If they don't have Anunoby, what can they do? We'll see. We're seeing crazy minutes for these guys already, but it's what they have. Either way, Anunoby, if he doesn't play, makes what I'm about to talk about even more prevalent, because a lineup that was awesome, I'll try to find the numbers for it while I'm talking, but just anecdotally watching the game was awesome, was 3 bigs in air quotes here for the Pacers. The most often one I noticed, at least, there could have been more mixing and matching that I didn't see, was Isaiah Jackson, Obi Toppin, and Siakam all together. The big adjustment from the first series, if you remember, was Siakam at the 5. They needed to go smaller when Portis was the backup center. If it's Achua as the backup center and the rest of the Knicks are smaller, right, they're reserved 4, air quotes, in this game, because Achua is now the backup 5, like Deuce McBride's playing point guard, and then it's like Hart, DiVincenzo, and Burks for 44 seconds. Like, they're just small. They're a small team right now, given who's available, especially when OG's out. And so the Pacers' size advantage was very, very obvious in this game. They ran that group I just talked about. Siakam, Toppin, Jackson, and then Shepard, McConnell were the guards for 9 minutes and 19 seconds plus 7. That's with 4 reserves plus Siakam, and they defended pretty well in those. So that's 33 possessions of plus 7. I like that look. I like that alignment for the Pacers. I think that was a smart adjustment. I'll be curious if they can get back to that for a while. They tried a smaller unit with Siakam Toppin in this game. It was also plus in this one. So I think just mixing up the front court in general is going to be something the Pacers try to do. But that was the only big groups, to the point of what I'm talking about, that actually happened in the game. That is something I think they should go more to. Maybe it's even with Turner at times, but if the Knicks can't have the size at all, that helps you on both ends, right? You have a size advantage on offense, and Toppin and Siakam are both skilled enough with the ball that creates advantages for your team. And defensively, you have size, where if you have to switch on Brunson, or if you're showing him Tyrese or whatever, it's harder for him. I liked that adjustment from the Pacers, and I think they should go to it again, especially again. It was a limited sample, but it was good. Isaiah Jackson's having a nice series. This is his 3rd effective, to me, playoff game in a row. Perhaps that's something they should continue to try, and even mixing and matching the guards to some extent, although I think part of this group's success is thing 2 that worked and is a point of contention on the internet for good reason in this game, and that's TJ McConnell, who's been spectacular in both of these games. 9 assists in the first half, 12 in total. Him and Haliburton had 21 of the team's 33 assists. They were flinging it around. 10 points, double-double for TJ McConnell. The only Pacers double-double in the series, whatever. If you like arbitrary cutoffs, there you go. McConnell was very good. And his defense was awesome. He pestered Brunson like crazy, was the guy who did the best at making him uncomfortable. And then he came out with 7-ish minutes to go. I'll pull up to make sure I have the exact time he exited the game and what the score was, and never returned. And that is a current point. Okay, Haliburton came in for McConnell. It was 103-105 at the time. The Pacers kept it at 2 for the next couple minutes. It was 110-112 with 4:35 to go, and then the Knicks rattle off, and it was never closer again. So the second group did okay for a little bit, but not long enough, and that can be how playing the Knicks goes. McConnell was really good, though, and the discussion point is, 1, he was out for a while. Should he have come back in given his actual defensive effectiveness? And this is a series where it's easier to play him, not because of Brunson's size, although that helps. Similar with Lillard in the first series. It's also because there's not, like, outside of the big for the Knicks, there's not, again, like I just talked about, there's not anyone huge, right? You can get away with the big lineups being effective, but smaller players have an easier role in this series. That's why you're able to mix and match who is on Brunson between Nembhard and Nesmith. So just continuing to ramble, sorry. McConnell was very good, and people wondered, why didn't he close the game? Maybe he should have. I think that is a fair argument for lots of people to make. The immediate question I had, I talked with Jared Wade about this, the absolute GOAT of Pacers coverage for years and years. He said maybe he should have been there too. The debate was for who, right? Haliburton, who is relegated to 3rd segment material today with 34 points in his best ever playoff game. You can't not have him in the game. I get that his defense wasn't spectacular in this game, but he had 34-9. His offense was everything for them. Andrew Nembhard, who was playing good defense, had 15 points on 7 for 9 shooting and 4 assists and 1 turnover. He was also good, right? Like, I think both of them should have been out there. I think people will right to say the answer, if it's anybody, should be Aaron Nesmith, who, again, is a vital defensive piece, but 2 for 7 from the field, missed his only 2-point shot, not making the threes, only had 6 points. Maybe you try McConnell, Nembhard, Haliburton, And that's matched up with Brunson, Hart, DiVincenzo. Maybe that's okay. Maybe you're okay with that as the Pacers. I think that's what the Knicks closed with, those three guys plus Achua and Hartenstein. 28 minutes for Precious Achua in this game. And that's how you try to get him in there to close. I don't know if it might depend on game flow for the next two games if he is worth the closing spot in this game. I was not so sure in the moment, but after the game, I think everybody's right. I think that would have been something that would have been smart for the Pacers to go to. They did not ultimately do it, obviously. And while they had a few, again, like I was just talking about, a few chances late in this game, weren't able to get it across the line. And so, of course, when they lose, it's I get why people have more questions for it. Again, I got the process for why they went with the lineup they did. But starting five together has not been as good in the series. They were minus 12 together in game one and minus 20 in game two. I'm not saying they need to change the starting lineup, although their series or their season is at the point where you have to think about it when you're down 0-2, but some other tweaks could look good. Toppin's been good in both games. McConnell's been good in both games. How the Pacers think about that and assess what they need to do rotationally, who knows? But I think McConnell had an argument to close this game. Toppin with another 20-point game. He was their second best scorer in this one. Ben Shepherd just makes every three he takes now, apparently. This is what the Pacers are, but they didn't win. They still didn't win despite all that stuff. Their bench was good. Haliburton had a career game. Nembhard had good stats. Why? Their front court needs to be better, and a couple other things that did not go the way the Pacers likely wanted in this game to close out today's show, a.k.a. adjustments. What else can they do better? Let's get right to that. Before we talk about that stuff, though, let's talk about Monopoly Go. We've got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know you're saying you already talked about that technical foul, but I'm going to keep telling you about it. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. And the more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get, like unique stickers. You can trade with your friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. For taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every single day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique minigames like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. There's always new timed events that'll help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win, or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it for free on the Google Play Store or App Store. Game on. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. MSG is getting loud, as you can see as I flip the camera around. The court is disappearing. It is about to be something else, maybe an entertainment venue, maybe a hockey rink, although the Rangers are leaving. And we'll see if the Pacers can get back here. It might depend on some of the stuff we're about to talk about. Can they find ways for some of their other players that we haven't gotten to yet to be more effective? Alex Golden tweeted this. He was all over it. So he had the stats ready, and now I can go through them too. But this was going to be a point I wanted to make about the front court battle. People talked about this before the series. I saw a lot of tweets like, well, the Pacers are better in the front court. That'll be huge. That hasn't been the case, and I wasn't so sure everybody should be so confident because I think Isaiah Hartenstein's very good. Hartenstein, 14 points on 5 for 7. Josh Hart, who you can call forward if you want. I think he's been a wing in the series. 19 points, 15 boards, 7 assists. OG Anunoby, we already talked about with 28. They dominated. They were all very good. Pacers front court. Aaron Nesmith, 2 for 7, 6 points. Pascal Siakam, 7 for 18 with 14 points. Myles Turner, 3 for 11, 7 boards, 6 points. Yes, Isaiah Hartenstein evened or exceeded the point totals of all three of those guys, who are a combined 12 for 36 from the field. That's obviously not good enough. They have to be better in the next game, especially if the big lineups are working, and maybe that was Toppin and maybe that's something else. But like clearly there's wiggle room for these guys to do something better. Nesmith, 6 threes, like he takes them. I'm like, yep, that's an open shot. Maybe it's just making them, right? It's that simple. And then we're not even debating if he should close the game if he's making his threes. Siakam, 7 for 18 on his way to 14 points. Got to make threes and missed both of his free throws. Again, a huge problem for him of late has been the charity stripe. 10 for 17 were the Pacers in this game from the foul line. Turner, much less effective in this game than game one. They never found as many ways to get him going in the pick and roll. He didn't see the ball as much. I think some of that is, the way that Haliburton being more aggressive impacts his touches and the way that he's defended by the Knicks. All these points all together led to the front court battle being a massive loss for the Pacers. I'm not even sure this is about adjustments, right? Maybe it is with the big lineup I already talked about and how that cycles different guys in and out. And Nesmith can be the 2 in a big lineup. But anyway, they've got to be better players. They've just got to play better, matching the intensity, matching the physicality, matching them on the glass of the front court players for the Knicks. They have to be better in this series because what happened tonight obviously was a huge problem for the Pacers. They need to figure out a way to get those guys going. Haliburton was much better. And this got relegated to third segment material. Going 7 for 11 from deep helps, 34, 6-9, 3 steals, 2 turnovers. Fantastic game. He gets targeted on defense a lot, and so he was amazing in this game. Obviously, I'm not trying to critique him in any way, but I bring up that last point to say I think the Pacers need to go at Jalen Brunson more, especially if he's hurting. Get Siakam the ball, and whoever's guarding Brunson, or whoever Brunson is guarding, set a guard screen. Get Siakam a chance to go downhill. If they're not going to switch, he'll have a half-step advantage. If they do switch, he's guarded by Jalen Brunson. Get him in the post. Siakam, did not have a good game and hasn't been. People are going too far with this. People have said, he has not been good since the first 2 games of the first series. That's completely false. He was amazing in the second half of Game 6 of the Bucks series, for example, and even was good in Games 3 and 4. They just didn't need him to do more with the way Turner's playing. Whatever. I don't need to look back. He needs to be better than this, though, obviously. And I have this in my notes for the first 2 games. There's been possessions where there's a small on him. For some reason, Josh Hart gets on him or DiVincenzo or whatever, and they can't get him the ball, especially in those big lineups. If he's the three, Pascal Siakam with Toppin and a center, he's got to see the post touch. It's not a lot, not so deliberately that it's obvious, but several times. The other thing Pascal Siakam struggled with, I talked about this, he had some bad closeouts on Anunoby early in this game that those need to be cleaned up a little bit because the Pacers' press was aggressive early. They were doing good stuff. They were crushing them with Brunson out, and it all fell apart, but they had good stuff that worked in this game. Another adjustment, Knicks played through Isaiah Hartenstein a lot. I talked about that with the Brunson hockey assists through Hartenstein in the second half, but even in the first half, Hartenstein was playing with the ball at the top of the key a lot in this game as a passer. That's why his assist total ended so high. He's not going to shoot it very often from there. He can take a step into the floater, though, so maybe the Pacers just step off of it a bit, but then they can go right into a DHO or a pick and roll, and you're a step away. So it's not easy to defend that. I understand why it's tricky, but I wonder if they could give him a half foot more of space if that lets the Pacers get more ground coverage towards defending their own rim. In this game, Knicks 62 points in the paint versus the Pacers 60 in this game. That's an improvement in points in the paint for the Knicks from Game 2 to Game 1. I'm trying to look more at some of my notes from this game and other stuff. If Nesmith is being guarded by Brunson, which was happening a lot in the second half of this game, Nesmith needs to do that stuff he was doing to Brook Lopez. Set those screens, get in the action, make Brunson be involved. That is the opposite part of Siakam, where Siakam needs to attack if whoever Brunson's man is. Maybe it's a Siakam Nesmith pick and roll or pick and pop, whatever that would be. Just get Brunson in the action. He was on Nesmith a lot, and they weren't using him as the screener as much as I thought. Maybe they should. Again, it's easy to couch coach these games, especially after they lose, but that's something I put in my notes that I thought was important. My next note after that just says, golly, that third quarter sucked. So that should tell you everything about how this game went. And then my next one in all caps is big bench group is a winner. Knicks too small forward in general. We already talked about that quite a bit. Precious Achiuwa at the 4 was the Knicks counter to that big group. That still means Hart or DiVincenzo is the nominal 3, and Siakam can have a size advantage. So if the Pacers believe in Obi Toppin's ability to battle with another big man, they can still survive, even if that's the adjustment the Knicks make. And if Anunoby's out, I imagine that's going to be the case. So keeping down that line of thinking, I still think it makes sense, even if the Knicks go as big as possible. And the last notes I have here, in all caps, quote, should have just closed with some bench guys. We already talked about that. Maybe even Toppin in the game. People were saying Toppin close over Siakam or Turner. I think he played well enough that does make sense, but that's just so hard from a talent level. And even again, the attention those guys command matters, but they did not shoot well in this game. I think that would have made sense now that I have totally talked through it just now. The last note I had is the Pacers' clutch defense has been just awful in both of these games. MSG is getting too loud. I hope this isn't distracting. In the clutch again, the Pacers could not get stops. Knicks finished this game with 130 points. That's a ton. And they were better in the second half than the first half. The Knicks with 4 minutes and 30 seconds to go, had 112. For the last 4:20 of this game, they scored 18 points. And again, I said this earlier, some of that was intentional free throws. Brunson got a tech free throw in the final minute. DiVincenzo got 2 on an intentional foul. Brunson got another tech free throw in the final minute. I get it. But they were scoring every possession. Brunson driving floater, DiVincenzo 3, Brunson turnaround fadeaway, Hartenstein free throws, Achiuwa dunk on an offensive rebound, DiVincenzo 3, Hartenstein cutting dunk. These are all in the last 5 minutes. Baskets. I just had second straight game that's been a problem for the Pacers. Big picture, the Pacers can tighten the screws defensively. Their offense has been really good in both of these games. That should be enough for them to win against this Knicks team, but it hasn't been. Perhaps some slight rotation, not even slight, perhaps some rotational changes are needed to either go big or go fast. perhaps definitely some defensive tweaks are needed to slow Brunson and the Knicks down. And these are very important games. We're about to learn a lot about the Pacers mentally, and we're about to see what the Knicks can do if they don't have OG Anunoby, because that once again changes everything. If they lose Mitchell Robinson and Anunoby, they have 4 of their 5 starters. They have Precious Achiuwa, they have Deuce McBride, and they had 44 seconds to Alec Burks. What can they do going forward? Look, it hasn't mattered yet. These guys can play for many minutes on minutes on minutes. That's why the depth thing hasn't mattered so much, because even if the Pacers bench is good, they're playing against starters who are also playing well. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how that all comes to a head in Game 3, which is now, of course, obviously the biggest game of the Pacers season to date. If they lose, it's over. No team's ever come back from down 0-3 in the NBA. If they win, they have a chance. They give themselves a chance to recover and get back to New York. We'll see. I think it's going to be an epic Game 3. I think the Pacers can do better at home. And we'll have all the coverage here on Locked On Pacers, as well as Forbes and SI. Looking forward to breaking it all down for you guys. Not sure if I'll have a guest tomorrow between games, unfortunately. I'll be flying back from Indy for most of the day. And then Caitlin Clark plays at night, so I'm covering Fever 2. So probably not time to get anybody on. I'll see if I can squeeze somebody in at some random time. We'll see. If not, you'll see me alone tomorrow, looking ahead to Game 3 with other adjustments, other storylines, all sorts of stuff to look forward to. Till then, everybody, thank you so much for listening. I'm on Twitter at Tony R. East, and the show is at Locked On Pacers. Have a wonderful day. See you very soon.